Welcome everyone to Sundays night's frequency meditation. Tonight's session is going to be very direct, somewhat disruptive, although you won't feel that, quite the opposite. Because we're here to talk about Easter, what that represents from the man, Jesus Christ. But we're not here to talk about Jesus as a story or a belief or something to admire from a distance. So there's no debates, there's no opinions, philosophies on Jesus, the man, the events, the religion around it, because we're going to go before all of that. The operating system. Stepping into what was actually happening inside Jesus, how he's operating moment to moment. Because what made Jesus powerful was not what he did. It was where he lived from while he did it. There was a center in him that didn't move. Pressure came, he stayed there. People challenged him. He stayed there. Everything around him shifted, and he remained exactly where he was inside. And that is the operating system. And the same one you have. So just notice yourself right now. If you're standing, sitting, walking down, doing the dishes, just notice yourself in your body and take a nice deep breath in and really feel that air coming into your lungs. Most people live from what is moving, their thoughts, their reactions, their emotions. Jesus lived from what does not move. And it was from that position is what it changed everything. Because when you stay in that place long enough, something deeper happens. You stop being defined by what used to move you. This is what the resurrection represents. It's not just something that happened to him. It's what happens when you're no longer pulled out of your center at all. That version of you that reacted, that was shaped by everything around it, no longer runs the system. But what remains is steady, something clear, something that cannot be shaken by what is happening outside. So tonight, we're going to feel that directly. You'll notice life moving and at the same time recognize the part of you that stays completely still underneath it. And then something very simple begins to happen. Instead of being pulled around, you remain where you are. Instead of moving, you remain where you are again and again. That is the rhythm, that's the shift. That's what he was demonstrating. Anything that comes, well, everything that comes into density is from that pure source. It has that purest meaning. And Jesus was an expression of that meaning, that operating system. But over the years, and even the time, due to everyone's interpretation of the events, most never had, very few, ever really truly understood Jesus's message. And that's why, so, going before the story, we're able to connect with that operating system and the definition of this coming into density, and how this man expressed that with the meaning that there is only one way. But again, very few people, and certainly over the thousands of years, very few people indeed has retained that purity in the meaning. And again, that's what he was demonstrating. So coming to the middle of your sphere right now, that center part behind your eyes, and just let's take a nice deep breath in. And if the mind wanders, which it will, coming back to that center, it's the most optimal position to be to receive clarity of tonight's transmission. It's the most optimal place to be to interpret anything with optimal clarity. So just let the body settle right now. Feel the weight of your body meeting the surface beneath you. Feel how it's already supported. Notice your spine. It rises gently through the center of the body. Your breath moving in a steady rhythm. Really, right now, there's nothing to adjust because something's already organizing itself without effort. So let's bring awareness to maybe a simple moment from your week, something very ordinary, like opening a message and feeling your body change before you even finish reading it, or checking your phone again because you're waiting for something to come through. Or maybe there's a conversation where something shifted slightly and you felt it immediately in your chest or your stomach. Just as you let that come into awareness, feel how the system responds, how attention gathers, how the body leans slightly into the moment as if it needs to almost resolve it. Mm-hmm. Just staying with this, feel the pull of it. Feel how quickly the system wants to move. And now, let's go deeper. At the same time, notice something else. Even while that's happening, there's something here that has not moved at all. Something steady. Something that doesn't lean forward, doesn't tighten, doesn't try to fix or control what's happening. And it's so simple, so honest, that it's easy to miss. And yet once you notice it, it becomes obvious that it's been there here the entire time. Everything could move, and this does not. Yeah. Taking another deep breath in. Just stay here for a moment longer. Not trying to hold anything in place. Not trying to stop the movement. Just noticing the contrast more clearly. How one part of the system continues to shift and respond, and how this other part has remained exactly where it is, untouched, unaffected, already complete in itself. And just feel how this changes the way the moment is experienced, not by removing anything, but by including something that has always been here. And let that become more real simply by noticing it without effort. Just keep coming back to the center point behind your eyes, centering you here right now. And just breathing in. And as the space opens again, just notice maybe there's a clearer sense of this contrast, movement, and stillness existing together. So let's bring awareness to a moment where more intensity, something that carried a little bit more weight. Maybe it's a decision about money or work where the outcome really mattered. Conversation where you're not sure how it would land. Or maybe a moment where something felt like it could go one way or the other. And just as this comes into awareness for you, feel how the body organizes around it, how the breath changes slightly, how tension narrows, how the system prepares. Just stay with that. Just feel how real it is. Feel how it pulls you in. And now as you feel that pressure in your own body, this is where the story of Christ becomes real in a completely different way. Because what's been described as a moment of extreme pressure, misunderstanding, and intensity, it's not something distant. It's something that human systems recognizes directly. And even here in this moment, as that pressure is present, there's something that doesn't move at all. Notice that. Notice how that steady place is still here, exactly as it was before, not shaped by the situation, not defined by the outcome, not altered by what's happening. Everything can intensify, and this remains. Everything can shift, and this stays, and everything can react, and this doesn't move. And stay here for a little longer inside that pressure, without needing to resolve it, without needing to move away from it. And just feel how different that is when the situation is allowed to exist. And at the same time, you're not leaving this steady position, centered. That center part behind your eyes, noticing your spine, Earth's frequencies, coming back up your spine, center. Feel how the system begins to soften slightly. Not because the situation has changed, because you're no longer being pulled fully into it. And something deeper begins to stabilize on its own. And this is what Christ was showing. Not just something that happened to a body, but something that exists in you, something you can feel right now, that even when everything appears to collapse, what you are doesn't move. And this is where the power, that purity of Jesus, this is the position that it comes through. Not in a future moment, not in a past moment, not on other timelines. Only is there access from this position. Just let this settle deeper for you. Notice there's a quiet easing through the system. It's okay if the mind is busy. We're not perceiving through the mind. We're at a deeper level. The mind will understand it. Some very quickly, some later. But the system's easing. And again, not because anything has been resolved, but because what you are no longer being shaped by what is happening. When you're no longer being shaped by what's happening, when you're no longer being pulled, this creates space in the body, space in the way you see things, space in how each moment is met. There's a clarity, and that clarity is a purity. That purity becomes an expression. So as we take another breath in, let's bring something current in your life, something that's still unfolding. Maybe something where part of you is still leaning in, still waiting, still watching. And just as you hold that gently, feel both layers at once now. The movement of the situation and that steadiness underneath it. Feel how different that is. Feel how the situation loses its grip slightly. Feel how the steadiness becomes more real the more you notice it. It's the same operating system as Jesus. He just was acutely aware of it. Just remain here a little longer. Now letting the steadiness be the reference point rather than the situation. Letting the situation continue to move while this stays exactly where it is. Feel how that begins to reorganize the way the moment is experienced, and without any effort from you. And this is when there's perhaps a simple recognition that starts to form, not as an idea. We're not at the mind level right now. In fact, this conversation is just keeping the mind occupied, but the understanding is coming at a much deeper level. Something you can feel directly, something that's always been here. It's not new, you're just exposing it. This is where the resurrection points to. Nothing's been lost, nothing has left. Nothing needs to return, because this has been here the entire time. And that's where the meaning becomes unmistakable. Not something coming back, something never leaving. And now you have direct experience of it, how you can feel it the moment you move off this. Everything tightens, everything speeds up, everything becomes harder to manage. And this continues now, exactly as it is. While everything else keeps moving, while life keeps unfolding, while conversations continue, while outcomes shift. And through all of that, this remains steady, unchanged, present. And as this continues, there's a quiet clarity. It doesn't need to be explained because it's already being lived. That everything we've moved through, the pressure, the movement, the steadiness beneath it, the demonstration of Christ, all points to something exact and uncompromising. There is only one way. But it's not the definition of what people think Jesus meant. What was being shown through him was this precise orientation, remaining centered within the stillness while everything moves, staying with that inner position as life unfolds, where nothing pulls you away from yourself. Nothing overrides that connection. That was his operating system expressed in density. And the reason why it reached so many and continues, because it carried that level of precision, that level of coherence, that level of certainty that reorganizes everything around it. It was so pure, even with all the interpretations, the distortions. is still in the consciousness today for us. So let's bring back that purity. Let's bring in that awareness with clarity of that operating system, so we are in the same rhythm of the same operating system as Jesus. Not becoming Jesus, not creating a persona, but from within, locating that center point. And even the moment of returning to life was the same demonstration, showing that when this position is absolute, life itself responds to it. It was not something separate. It was a continuation of the same coherence, the same certainty, the same alignment that remains steady, even if everything else shifts. And what we're doing here is the same movement, bringing you back to that exact point where clarity begins to emerge from within you in the same way, naturally, steadily, as your default, not as something to reach, but as something that has always been here. And the great sacrifice from this, there's a natural recognition that begins to also settle in. And that when this position remains steady, life itself starts to respond in a completely different way. It no longer feels like something you're moving through or trying to manage, but something that begins to organize around you, align with you, move with you. And this is what was being demonstrated in its purest form. That level of certainty, that level of coherence, where even in the most extreme moments, that position remained unchanged. And what appeared as the ultimate event, the return to life, was simply the continuation of that same alignment, showing that when this remains absolute, life itself responds to it, reorganizes around, reflects it back in form. What some may refer to as a miracle. And this is the deeper meaning that's been carried through time. That what was shown was not something distant, but something exact, something available, something that can be lived, where the center remains steady and everything else begins to move in response to it. And just notice that now, even here, how natural it is when everything begins to settle into place around that center, quietly, effortlessly, as if it already knows where to go. And let that remain exactly as it is, as everything continues to unfold from here. And just for a moment longer, stay exactly where you are. Taking another breath in, noticing you in your body. Let's go deeper. There's something else here that becomes clear when this settles fully. It's been spoken about for centuries. God gave his only son, that his life was given as a sacrifice. Let that be felt here in maybe a completely different way. Not as something that had to happen, not as something imposed, but as a conscious demonstration of what remains possible when this center is held fully. Because from that level of clarity, from that level of coherence, other possibilities were always available. Jesus was always in control. The situation could have unfolded differently at any point, and yet the position did not change. And in that, something precise was shown. And that when this position is held completely, everything begins to organize differently around you, rather than you moving through life trying to manage it. That you're no longer moving around circumstances. Circumstances begin to move in response to you. This is exactly why it was taken all the way through. Because what was shown, there was a true sacrifice. Not something forced, but something consciously lived. That even as the body went through extreme, violent conditions, that position remained exactly where it was. At any point, another possibility could have been created. The direction could have changed. The outcome could have been shifted. The influence that a man like Jesus had could outpower anything. And it did not, because it was being demonstrated in full density in a way that could not be misunderstood. That when this center is held absolutely, nothing overrides it. Not pain, not pressure, not circumstances. And even what appears as death itself does not end it. That is why the return of life matters. Because it completes the demonstration that when this position is absolute, life itself responds, reorganizes, and continues through you. So it was a sacrifice. This man experiencing such duality. But it was an expression of the underlying operating system It was a manual, if you like, for how we can create ourselves here. And that was the operating system that was being shown. So it could be seen, so it could be followed, so it could be lived. And that this is not something separate from you. This is the same operating system that exists within you, available in exactly the same way. The more you remain here and continue refining that precision. And this is exactly the movement we're working with, the same return to center, the same stability, same coherence that allows everything else to begin organizing around it. This is what the space-time method is. Just feel that now, even here. How everything begins to shift when you remain exactly where you are, when nothing pulls you away from this center. And everything begins to settle and organize around that. And let that remain exactly as it is. And I'll leave everyone here till next week. I'll be in Brazil.